Growing up as the son of a hockey legend can be both a blessing and a burden. Brett Hull, son of the iconic Bobby Hull, was once seen as an unmotivated, out-of-shape kid with little interest in the game. No one expected him to follow in his father's footsteps, let alone surpass his NHL scoring records. But against all odds, he transformed himself into one of the greatest goal scorers in hockey history. From being overlooked as a prospect to lighting up the NHL with 86 goals in a single season, this is the incredible story of Brett Hull, his rise, his struggles, and his lasting impact on the game. Brett Hull was born on August 9, 1964, in Belleville, Ontario, arriving in a hockey family that would seem destined to produce a star. His father, Bobby Hull, was already famous for revolutionizing the slap shot and entertaining crowds with his explosive skating speed and charismatic flair. Bobby, nicknamed the Golden Jet, had made a name for himself primarily with the Chicago Blackhawks, and his presence loomed large not just over the city, but over the entire hockey world. Meanwhile, Brett's mother, Joanne McKay, was an accomplished figure skater who understood the rigors and discipline of life on the ice. His uncle, Dennis Hull, had also been a standout forward for the Blackhawks. With that kind of bloodline, you would think Brett was a sure bet to pick up a hockey stick and follow in the family's footsteps immediately. And yet, from the very start of his life on skates, Brett admitted to being, in his own words, lazy. He just didn't have that burning passion to push himself. Instead of taking naturally to the relentless demands of skating drills, he preferred to linger in the net as a goaltender, perhaps thinking it required less chasing of the puck and a little less sweaty effort. That attitude, so uncharacteristic of a future Hall of Famer, meant that many scouts and coaches dismissed him in his formative years. They saw his last name and expected a phenom, but they were quickly disillusioned when they discovered he wasn't one of those kids who would rocket down the ice at breakneck speed. He was, to put it bluntly, not the scorching skater that his father was. But the seeds of greatness had been planted, albeit quietly, in Brett's youth. By focusing on shooting, because that was something he actually enjoyed, he developed an uncanny knack for blasting pucks past goaltenders. Even if he didn't care much for the forward grind or the constant hustle at that point, he loved the feeling of launching the puck and hearing it hit the twine. That raw ability, combined with a natural gift for finding open ice, would become the foundation of his future success. Another crucial piece of his development came when Bobby Hull signed a groundbreaking $1 million contract in 1972 with the Winnipeg Jets of the World Hockey Association, WHA. 8-year-old Brett and the rest of the family relocated from Chicago to Winnipeg, giving Brett an opportunity to skate with professional players in practices, so long as he showed enough interest to get on the ice. In Winnipeg, Brett found some mentors who would shape his thinking about the game more than his father ever did. Rather than receiving continuous technical instruction from Bobby, he was advised to watch closely as Bobby's Swedish linemates Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nilsson dazzled with their style of play. They were agile, creative, and clever, proving that pure speed was not the only factor in high-level hockey. Seeing these players handle the puck and shift seamlessly around defenders gave Brett new ideas about how he might flourish. He didn't have to be an intense, non-stop forechecking forward. He could be a savvy shooter who waited for the precise moment to unleash his laser-like shot or slip into a soft spot in the defense. That said, Hull's time in Winnipeg was also colored by turmoil at home. Bobby's marriage to Joanne disintegrated in 1979, sparking a divorce that created tension and fractures in the family. Brett, then a teenager, would move with his mother, her new husband, and 2 of his siblings to Vancouver. During that period, the father and son spent considerably less time together. Perhaps as a reaction to the upheaval, Brett drifted from serious engagement in hockey. He described himself as a fun-loving kid who preferred music and hanging out over being singled out as the next big hockey star. Even if the entire hockey establishment had pegged him from birth as a scion of greatness, Brett himself wasn't sure he wanted that life. By 17, he was largely off the radar for major junior teams in Canada, having basically quit the pursuit. On paper, that might have looked like the end of his story as a top-level hockey prospect. He had gone undrafted in the 1982 NHL entry draft, simply because no one believed in his drive or dedication. And because he was overshadowed by the glitz around his father's name, scouts tended to be even harsher on him. He wasn't simply another unknown teenager. He was the son of Bobby Hull, and if he didn't meet those lofty expectations, the easy conclusion was that he wasn't worth a second look. Yet fate and a push from his mother intervened. In 1982-83, Brett joined the Penticton Knights of the Tier 2 British Columbia Junior Hockey League, BCJHL, effectively giving the game one more try. There, he scored 48 goals in 50 games, a glimmer of what was possible if he really set his mind to shooting and scoring. In that first season with Penticton, though, the NHL still paid no attention. Everyone thought the laziness might rear its head again at any point, so Brett went undrafted a second time in 1983. But something was changing. He felt the taste of competition and discovered the joy of letting that big shot rip, and hitting the back of the net again and again. The next season, 1983-84, Hull's performance skyrocketed to a jaw-dropping 105 goals in 56 games. He set a new league scoring record with 188 points. Suddenly, the entire hockey world had to take notice. He wasn't just overshadowing defenders, he was embarrassing them. That was enough for Calgary Flames general manager Cliff Fletcher to take a chance on the 20-year-old kid with the big shot, drafting him 117th overall in the 6th round of the 1984 NHL entry draft. With an NHL team at least partially believing in him, Brett decided to refine his game further by playing college hockey at the University of Minnesota Duluth starting in 1984-85. Despite his ongoing struggles with skating, he was able to unleash his blistering shot on the collegiate stage to the tune of 32 goals as a freshman. Imagine an 18 or 19-year-old stepping onto the ice, still not the world's greatest skater, but possessing an almost magical ability to beat goaltenders from any angle. The following season, 1985-86, he found the net 52 times, setting a school record. The accolades poured in. WCHA First Team All-Star finalist for the Hobey Baker Award. It was abundantly clear to everyone that if you gave Brett Hull space in the offensive zone, you were essentially handing him a goal. And yet, ironically, his path to the international stage required him to make a big decision about national allegiance. As a dual Canadian-American citizen, Hull could theoretically represent either Canada or the United States. Team Canada, perhaps still skeptical of his potential or feeling secure in their depth of talent, chose not to include him in their selection for the 1986 World Ice Hockey Championships. Team USA happily extended an invitation. With a point to prove, Brett Hull gratefully accepted. He led the Americans in scoring with 7 goals and 11 points. The experience did more than just add to his resume, it bonded him to the American program. From that moment on, Hull would wear the stars and stripes in international play. For many Canadians, this was controversial, especially when he would later meet Team Canada on the ice in crucial tournaments. But Hull himself felt no regrets. The U.S. coaches had believed in him. Fresh from that international success, Hull decided to go pro following his sophomore year of college. He signed with the Calgary Flames and even briefly joined them during the 1986 Stanley Cup playoffs, though he mainly spent his early professional days in the American Hockey League, with the Moncton Golden Flames. There, under the old-school approach of coach Terry Crisp, Hull often found himself benched. Crisp believed Hull's defensive play and overall discipline were lacking. But Brett persevered, transforming the frustration of benching into motivation. Once he earned a stable spot in Moncton's lineup, he delivered one of the best rookie seasons the league had ever seen, registering 50 goals and 93 points, enough to claim the All-Rookie of the Year title. That gave him another push of momentum, though he was snubbed once again by Team USA for the 1987 Canada Cup. Calgary coach Bob Johnson, who led that American squad, preferred the grinding style of Chris Nealon to Hull's pure sniper game. The sting must have been intense for Brett, knowing he could have contributed big goals in that high-profile tournament. But if ever there was an athlete who used snubs as fuel, it was Brett Hull. A few weeks later, the Flames put him on their NHL roster for the 1987-88 season. Even though he still faced sporadic benchings and a lack of full trust from the coaching staff, he made the most of his opportunities. In 52 games, he scored 26 goals, proving that, even in limited ice time, he was a dangerous weapon. The question then became, would Calgary truly commit to him as a core player, or was he still a trade chip waiting to be flipped for more established talent? That question was answered on March 7, 1988, when the Flames dealt Hull and Steve Bozek to the St. Louis Blues in exchange for defenseman Rob Ramage and goaltender Rick Wamsley. Calgary's general manager, Cliff Fletcher, was fully aware of Hull's superstar potential, but the Flames were chasing a Stanley Cup and believed they needed more immediate help on defense and in net. Ironically, they would win the Cup in 1989, so it's fair to say they accomplished their short-term objective. Still, from the Blues' perspective, GM Ron Caron was ecstatic to get Brett Hull. He had yearned to bring the budding scorer to St. Louis, envisioning him as the eventual face of the franchise. In that regard, the trade may be among the most beneficial for both teams in NHL history. The Flames got the final pieces they needed for a championship, and the Blues acquired their star sniper for a decade to come. In his first full season with the Blues, 1988-89, Hull smashed in 41 goals, which was good enough to prove that a real superstar was emerging in the Gateway City. Yet something significant happened at season's end. Hull headed into a one-on-one review with his head coach, Brian Sutter, expecting a warm pat on the back for netting 41. Instead, Sutter told him he wasn't good enough yet. It was a blunt message that rubbed Hull the wrong way initially, but it also lit a fire in him. Determined to show Sutter, and the entire hockey world, that he could be more than a specialized goal scorer, Brett reported to the 1989-90 training camp in prime physical shape, shedding weight and arriving at a muscular 192 pounds. With that new physique and unstoppable shot, he erupted with 72 goals, leading the league. It was at this juncture that Hull began to refine his repertoire, shifting from relying almost exclusively on a rocket-like slap shot to developing an equally lethal wrist shot and snapshot. The following season, the Blues shook up the roster by trading center Peter Zezel, the man who had helped facilitate Hull's 72-goal campaign, in a move that initially angered Brett. Yet from that trade emerged an even more potent pairing for him: the arrival of Adam Oates, a playmaking wizard whose passing skills were off the charts. Teamed up on the Blues' top line, they were humorously dubbed Hull and Oates, a playful pun on the famous music duo Hall and Oates. The synergy between them was immediate and electric. Oates' uncanny ability to see the ice and deliver pinpoint feeds perfectly complemented Hull's knack for slipping into the open lanes and unleashing a shot so quick that goaltenders could barely track the puck. During the 1990-91 season, the chemistry soared to historic levels. Hull scored a jaw-dropping 86 goals, an output that remains the third highest single-season total in NHL history, trailing only Wayne Gretzky's two record-setting years in the 1980s. Oates himself dazzled with an unbelievable 90 assists in just 61 games. With that 86-goal burst, Brett Hull had arrived at the pinnacle of scoring prowess in the NHL. He collected trophy after trophy, from the Hart Memorial Trophy, awarded to the league's most valuable player, to the Lester B. Pearson Award, voted on by the players themselves, and multiple first All-Star team honors. Over a three-year stretch from 1989-90 to 1991-92, he tallied 228 goals total, leading the league in goals in each of those seasons. In other words, he was not a one-year wonder. He was arguably the most fearsome sniper of his era. Fans marveled at how easy he made it look, drifting away from defenders, putting himself in prime position, and striking with a wrist or snapshot that seemed to leap off his stick faster than the speed of sound. Bobby the Golden Jet Hull was known for his iconic blonde hair, boisterous personality, and mesmerizing end-to-end rushes. Brett, heavier set and slower, was quite different in style, but they did share something essential: those massive forearms that generated an almost otherworldly torque for both father and son. Additionally, both had a certain swagger, an outspoken nature that could rub people the wrong way, but also made them stand out in the often more reserved hockey environment. Over time, father and son reconciled their personal differences, and Brett found his own identity as the Golden Brett, simultaneously acknowledging the paternal legacy while forging a path that was wholly distinct. Despite massive personal achievements, Hull sometimes faced criticism that he was too one-dimensional. He caught flack for not backchecking enough or for being surly with the media. Additionally, the Blues' postseason results never seemed to match their regular season success, and hockey being the ultimate team game, critics pinned some blame on star players like Hull. He butted heads with the Blues management and coaches, most notably Mike Keenan, who took the helm in St. Louis in 1994-95. Keenan was old school, uncompromising, and quick to call players out. Hull, equally strong-willed, bristled under his leadership. Tensions escalated to the point where Keenan stripped Hull of the team captaincy, which he had held since 1992. To make matters even more complicated, the Blues made a huge splash in acquiring Wayne Gretzky in the 1995-96 season, hoping to pair the Great One's playmaking with Hull's finishing. But that experiment was short-lived, as Gretzky did not re-sign after just 18 regular season games and a brief playoff run. He eventually moved on, leaving Hull even more frustrated with Blues management. Amid that chaotic environment, Hull found redemption and a sense of belonging on the international stage in 1996. Wearing the red, white, and blue of Team USA, he dominated the World Cup of Hockey, scoring 7 goals in 7 games en route to a stunning American victory over Canada in the final. Canadian fans, feeling betrayed by his dual citizenship decision and the fact that Brett had declined to play for Canada, booed him mercilessly in Ottawa during a semi-final match against Russia. Chants of traitor rained down every time he touched the puck. That animosity only fueled him, as though each jeer was a reminder that he had something to prove. When Team USA ultimately hoisted the trophy, Hull's choice to represent them felt validated. He believed the US program had embraced him from the start, unlike the repeated rejections from Team Canada in his earlier days. Tensions in St. Louis finally reached a breaking point in the 1996-97 season. Both Hull and Keenan criticized each other openly in the press. The Blues made a decision to back their star sniper, firing Keenan in December 1996. Hull stayed on, but the team itself still struggled to make a deep playoff run, and after the 1997-98 season, Brett became an unrestricted free agent. Negotiations to keep him in St. Louis fell through when the Blues refused to include a no-trade clause in the contract. Hull, feeling underappreciated and conscious of how quickly a situation could sour under certain coaches, parted ways with the only NHL team that had ever truly unlocked his scoring genius. He soon signed a 3-year, $17 million contract with the Dallas Stars in July 1998. For many fans in St. Louis, it was a heartbreak, as Hull had been the Blues' marquee draw for a decade. Though the move upset some Blues loyalists, in hindsight it led to one of the most defining moments of Brett Hull's career. The Dallas Stars, under coach Ken Hitchcock, were assembling a defense-first powerhouse but needed that final offensive piece to push them over the top. Hull brought leadership, an incisive shot, and the ability to score clutch goals. In the 1999 Stanley Cup Finals against the Buffalo Sabres, Hull would strike in one of the most controversial goals in NHL history. During the third overtime of Game 6, with the series at 3-2 in favor of Dallas, Hull corralled a rebound in front of star goaltender Dominik Hasek and slipped the puck into the net. On its face, that was obviously a cup-winning goal, securing the first championship in Dallas Stars franchise history. But Buffalo argued furiously that Hull's skate had been in the crease at the moment he scored, violating the foot in the crease rule that was on the books that season. The NHL ultimately ruled that Hull had possession of the puck before entering the crease, making the goal legal, and awarding Dallas the championship. Decades later, fans, particularly Sabres supporters, still debate whether or not the goal should have counted. For Hull, it was undeniably a shining moment of glory. He had at last grasped the Stanley Cup, adding the one prize that had eluded him in St. Louis for so many years. 2 seasons later, Dallas chose not to pick up the option on his contract for 2001-02, and so Brett Hull found himself on the move again. Despite receiving better financial offers from the Montreal Canadiens and the New York Rangers, he opted to sign with the Detroit Red Wings, a formidable squad that had just brought in star goalie Dominik Hasek and veteran scorer Luc Robitaille, and already boasted an array of superstars from Steve Yzerman to Nicklas Lidstrom and Sergei Fedorov. Brett's reasoning was clear: he wanted another Stanley Cup. In Detroit, he got exactly that. The 2001-02 Red Wings roared through the regular season, capturing the President's Trophy as the top team, and Hull himself notched 30 goals in support of their balanced attack. During the playoffs, the man who had so often been called one-dimensional rose to the occasion with a team leading 10 goals, proving his worth. Paired with rookie sensation Pavel Datsyuk and Boyd Devereaux on a line Hull referred to tongue-in-cheek as 2 kids and a goat, he delivered critical scoring night after night. The Red Wings ousted Vancouver, then St. Louis, then overcame a tough 7-game series against Colorado to advance to the Stanley Cup final against the Carolina Hurricanes. Hull's timely goals in Games 3 and 4 helped tilt the series in Detroit's favor, and soon he was lifting the cup for the second time in his career. This time as part of a stacked roster that many consider among the greatest teams ever assembled. Hull stuck around Detroit for 2 more productive seasons, continuing to demonstrate that, even as he aged, his knack for reading defenses and unleashing that hallmark shot could still yield 20 to 30 goals a year. But by 2004, the league was moving in a younger, faster direction, and Hull signed a free agent deal with the Phoenix Coyotes, now interestingly coached by none other than Wayne Gretzky, Hull's former brief teammate in St. Louis. In Phoenix, Brett chose to wear his father's famous number 9, a symbolic gesture that both honored Bobby Hull's own stint in the desert, albeit in the WA with the Jets franchise, and signaled Brett's desire to close out his NHL journey in style. However, after just 5 games in the 2005-06 season, he sensed he could no longer keep up to his own standard of play. Rather than linger in a role he felt he could not fulfill, Hull retired abruptly, leaving behind a legacy that few in the hockey world will ever match. The St. Louis Blues, grateful for the many years of highlight reel goals, retired Hull's jersey number 16 in 2006, and in 2010 unveiled a bronze statue of him outside the Enterprise Center. In 2008, he was enshrined in the United States Hockey Hall of Fame, and a year later, he took his rightful place in the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. Over 19 NHL seasons, Brett Hull amassed 844 regular season goals, 2 Stanley Cup rings, a Hart Trophy, a Pearson Award, multiple goal-scoring titles, and countless memories for fans who loved watching him rip pucks top corner. Meanwhile, father Bobby Hull, who passed away in 2023, finished his own NHL career with 610 regular season goals, plus 62 more in the playoffs, along with 303 WA regular season tallies and 43 WA playoff goals, giving him a combined 1,018 in major professional competition. Bobby also won a Stanley Cup with the Blackhawks in 1961 and claimed 2 Avco Cup championships in the WA with the Winnipeg Jets. Both father and son left an indelible mark on the game, each forging an unmistakable identity. Bobby with his blazing speed and flamboyant persona, Brett with his lethal shot and outspoken wit. So who really had the better career, Bobby or Brett? That's a question that sparks debate around dinner tables and in barbershops wherever hockey fans congregate. Bobby Hull changed the game's economics, paving the way for bigger contracts when he signed that then astounding $1 million deal to jump to the WA. He revolutionized the slap shot and thrilled fans with his powerful legs and golden hair streaming behind him. Brett Hull, on the other hand, blossomed in an era of intense parity and incredibly skilled goaltending, yet still managed to record some of the highest single-season goal totals ever seen. He also remained relevant well into the clutch and grabbed 1990s and the early 2000s, winning 2 cups with 2 different teams. Both men faced controversies. Bobby for certain statements and personal troubles off the ice, Brett for his unabashed nature and occasional friction with coaches and fans. Yet each soared to become a generational icon. When reflecting on Brett Hull's life journey, starting as the carefree goalie who lacked the will to skate, culminating in a storied Hall of Fame career, one can't help but marvel at how drastically he reshaped his own narrative. Dismissed in junior drafts, overlooked by Team Canada, criticized for his defensive shortcomings, he went on to become a beloved star for multiple franchises, representing the U.S. internationally and delivering some of the most jaw-dropping goal-scoring seasons in league history. His boisterous sense of humor, willingness to speak his mind, and refusal to conform completely to the stoic hockey code made him a polarizing but undeniably compelling figure. In every city he played, whether St. Louis, Dallas, Detroit, or Phoenix, he left an imprint, whether in the record books, the memories of fans, or the highlight reels broadcast for decades thereafter. As the son of the Golden Jet, he was at first overshadowed, and perhaps that contributed to his reluctance to truly commit to the game in his youth. But the twist in the story is that eventually, Brett Hull not only embraced the daunting family legacy but soared alongside it. Before he retired, father and son had mended their bond, and though they were never carbon copies on the ice, they each shared that unstoppable shot, that gift for entertaining, and that irresistible swagger. Brett Hull's name is forever etched into hockey lore as the Golden Brett, a testament not just to who his father was, but to who he became in his own right. Even today, fans debate the biggest what-if scenarios around him. What if Calgary had kept him? Would the Flames still have won the Cup in 1989 with him? What if he had chosen Team Canada instead of Team USA? Could he have formed a dream line with Wayne Gretzky in international play for multiple tournaments? And what if the Buffalo Sabres' protest about his skate in the crease had caused the league to overturn that 1999 Stanley Cup winning goal? But hockey is built on stories and controversies, and these what-if moments are part of the charm. Brett Hull, never one to shy away from an opinion, would likely laugh over a beer and tell you that things turned out exactly as they were meant to. He tallied 844 NHL goals, got his name on the cup twice, and walked away from the ice on his own terms, leaving behind a highlight reel for the ages. Though the modern NHL continues to see incredible shooters, the distinct flair that Hull brought to the late 1980s and 1990s has become part of hockey's mythology. Fans remember the adrenaline rush whenever the puck found his stick near the face-off circle, that immediate hush of anticipation before the net rippled. They remember his comedic interviews, the honest sound bites that made him a darling of TV segments. They remember the meltdown in Buffalo after the Cup-winning goal of 1999, a meltdown that still simmers for Sabres loyalists. They remember him jokingly calling out fans in St. Louis, referring to them as losers, a remark he later took back, learning that words can stir fervent emotions in a hockey town. But perhaps above all, they remember the undeniable fact that Brett Hull was a generational sniper whose presence on the ice left defenders guessing and goaltenders trembling. After his retirement, Hull moved into various roles, including front office positions, ambassador responsibilities, and media commentary. His name remains a magnet for attention. Whenever he appears in a Blues uniform for an alumni event, or in any NHL function, cameras follow him. He also makes occasional appearances on hockey broadcasts, bringing that candid, occasionally irreverent perspective that people have come to expect from him. He stands as living proof that the path to hockey greatness doesn't always have to be linear or conventional. In a sport that often prizes uniformity and strict discipline, Hull was the free spirit who made it work his way. On the question of Bobby Hull versus Brett Hull, who reigns supreme? It's an impossible question to resolve definitively, given the difference in eras, the expansions and contractions of the NHL and WA, the style of play, and the father versus son dynamic. Bobby was a trailblazer who shifted the game's financial landscape and enthralled fans with speed and power. Brett was the lethal shot who thrived in a more defensively structured league, notching historically high goal totals and capturing the imagination of a generation that included goaltenders like Patrick Waugh, Dominik Hasek, and Martin Brodeur. Perhaps the surest statement is that both are legends, each wearing the last name Hull on the back of a jersey that was unstoppable in its time. Looking back, Brett Hull's numbers, 844 NHL goals, 2 Stanley Cups, countless awards, and a revered place in the Hall of Fame, are more than enough for him to stand proudly in the pantheon of hockey's all-time greats. And his father, with hundreds of goals spread between the NHL and WA, along with a Stanley Cup and multiple scoring titles, still commands respect as one of the game's original superstars. They are forever linked by family ties and the golden glow of their monikers, the Golden Jet and the Golden Brett. Both soared to unimaginable heights, leaving a legacy that fans will continue to celebrate, analyze, and debate. For Brett, it was a journey that started in the net as an unmotivated youth, peaked in an era-defining stretch of goal-scoring, and concluded with one of the most unforgettable cup-winning goals in history. And when all is said and done, perhaps the moral of the Brett Hull saga is that even if the entire world expects you to fill your father's shoes, you can still lace up your own in a totally distinct way, one that might eventually outshine the very legacy that once overshadowed you. From Belleville to Winnipeg to Vancouver, from Penticton to Calgary to St. Louis, from St. Louis to Dallas to Detroit and finally to Phoenix, Hull's odyssey was anything but predictable. He played with some of the greatest names in hockey history, sparred with some of the most notorious coaches, and represented 2 nations on the international stage. He won over the hearts of fans in multiple cities, left a trail of highlight reel goals, and stirred up controversies that remain hot topics for debate. Yet beyond the stats and the drama, The unifying thread is Brett Hull's undeniable love for scoring goals. A passion that propelled him from a borderline afterthought to a generational legend. That, more than anything else, captures why his story resonates so strongly with fans old and young. You don't have to be the fastest, or the biggest, or the earliest to commit to the cause, as long as you have that one defining skill and the will to leverage it when it matters most. And that, ultimately, is how an admittedly lazy, pudgy, music-obsessed teenager, who had once floated aimlessly away from the sport, would come to join his father among the immortals of the game. Two Hall of Famers sharing one remarkable surname, each with a captivating tale of how they etched that name into hockey history forever.